The old house on Blackwood Lane always felt steeped in secrets. It belonged to my grandparents, who raised my mother there until she married and moved away. I used to visit as a young child, running through the corridors, trailing my fingertips across faded wallpaper, thrilled by the smell of old wood. But once my grandmother passed, my mother let the property stand vacant. The family lacked the heart to sell it, but no one wanted to live there either. Years rolled by. I grew up, set out on my own, and let the memories of that rural home sink into a dusty corner of my mind. It wasn't until I was in my late 20s, after my mother passed, that I rediscovered Blackwood House in a tangle of estate paperwork. Suddenly, I was the sole owner of a crumbling 2-story farmhouse in a remote corner of the countryside. Part of me hesitated. Did I really want to confront the lonely structure and its ghosts? But something in my mother's final instructions spurred me on. She had always been oddly skittish about the property, telling me half-stories of strange nights. Perhaps I owed it to her and to my grandmother's memory to see what was left. So one late summer day, I drove miles through winding roads and thickening woods, the sky overcast, to the place I once half feared, half loved. I arrived to find the yard overgrown with tall grass, the shutters drooping, and the porch steps warped by time. A sense of desolation hung in the air, like the house itself was holding its breath. I parked, grabbed my duffel, and climbed the porch. The key still fit. The door opened with a groan. Dust motes swirled in the dim hallway. The interior smelled of stale air and old cedar. Memories flickered. Me as a child, clinging to my grandmother's hand as she led me upstairs, her reassuring voice telling me everything was safe. I shook off a shiver and stepped inside, determined. I'd restore this place, or at least salvage what I could. Maybe I would sell it, or perhaps I'd keep it as a quiet retreat. I had no illusions it would be easy. The house needed major repairs and a thorough cleaning. Yet from that first moment, I sensed I wasn't alone. It was nothing tangible, just an undercurrent. Like the house had eyes, watching me from corners. I told myself I was being silly. It was just an empty, neglected home. And I was an adult, fully capable of turning on the lights, sweeping away cobwebs, bringing the old property back to life. If only I'd known what was waiting beneath those dusty floorboards. My first days at the house passed in a blur of cleaning, patching leaks, and trudging up and down the creaky stairs. I pried open old trunks in the attic, rummaged through closets, and found a host of outdated clothes, yellowed letters, and bizarre knickknacks. Most items proved unremarkable, though each told some piece of my grandparents' lives. I felt close to them in a way I never had, piecing together details about their tastes and struggles. 3 days in, I began restoring the main bedroom on the second floor, the room that used to be my grandparents'. The floor was scuffed, and in one corner, a few planks were slightly warped. On a whim, I decided to see if the boards needed replacing. Lifting them carefully revealed a shallow space beneath. I expected maybe old wiring or worthless junk. Instead, I found a small battered wooden box. Tucked next to it was a cloth-wrapped bundle. Heart thumping with sudden curiosity, I set the bundle aside and opened the box. Inside lay an envelope with my grandmother's handwriting. A hush seemed to fall over the room as I slid out the envelope's contents. It was a journal slim with a worn leather cover. My grandmother's name, Helen, the one I'd seen on so many household papers, was inscribed inside the first page. My hands shook a bit. I unfolded the cloth bundle next. It contained an antique silver hand mirror, tarnished with age, along with a small iron key. Odd items to hide. The mirror's surface was cloudy, as though it had seen better days. I placed them carefully on a nearby chair and turned my attention to the journal. Leafing through the first pages, I saw neat, deliberate handwriting, familiar. My grandmother wrote about her daily routines, the joys of living in a quiet rural home, the chores, the weather. But as I flipped further, the tone shifted, entries becoming uneasy, then frightened. My breath caught as I read, October 5th. The full moon was bright last night, silvering the fields. I heard footsteps outside, heavy, scraping footsteps. I peeked through the curtains and saw something tall crossing the yard. Not a man, not a normal wolf either. Its shape was in between. I told Thomas, my grandfather, but he dismissed it as a stray dog. I can't shake the feeling something is wrong. My stomach fluttered. Wolf-like creature? Did my grandmother believe a werewolf lurked outside? Yet I continued reading, drawn deeper into her hidden fears. October 12th. It came again near midnight. I heard its breathing by the porch. I forced myself to look out. It stood upright, pacing slowly along the front. Like a wolf but elongated limbs, a broad chest. My heart nearly stopped. I saw the gleam of eyes in the moonlight. Then it vanished into the trees. Should I tell someone? Thomas is away on business. I'm alone. The next page is chronicled multiple sightings, always on or near the full moon. She described the creature's silhouette around the windows, paw prints in the soft earth that seemed half human, half wolf. The entries grew more frantic. October 19th. I can't sleep. Every night I dread hearing those scratches at the walls. I found claw marks on the back door this morning, thin and deep. It's testing the house, seeing if it can get in. The mirror we keep near the window? Something about the reflection unsettles me. When I glance in it, I catch glimpses of movement behind me, but when I turn, nothing's there. October 25th. Stormy evening, thunder shaking the shutters. I saw it again among the lightning flashes. It crouched under the oak tree, watching the house. I recognized something, like a grin, but not quite. My hair stood on end. I locked every door, every window, but in my mind, I can still see that thing prowling. The final entry was dated almost 4 decades ago, a single line that made my blood go cold. November 2nd. Tonight it knocked on the window and it smiled. Those words hammered in my head. It knocked. It smiled. My grandmother had faced something truly terrifying, if her account was genuine. Or perhaps these entries were manifestations of a frightened mind, an overactive imagination in a secluded environment. But the detail, the raw dread. I shivered, looking at the concealed mirror and key. Could they be related? I set the journal aside, heart still racing, and took the mirror in my hands. The reflection was murky, but I saw my own pale face staring back. Why hide these items under the floorboards? Clearly Grandmother Helen believed the threat was real. Maybe she wanted to keep her diary a secret from my grandfather, or from whomever might discover it. That night, as dusk thickened the shadows, I felt unsettled. I locked the doors. I told myself the creature in her journal was no more than a bad dream from years past. The rural surroundings were quiet now. No sign of any monstrous presence. Yet an instinctive chill lingered at the back of my mind. In the following days, I continued working on the house by daylight, reading my grandmother's journal whenever I had spare moments. My imagination conjured images of a tall, wolf-like figure pacing in the yard, the boards of the porch groaning under its weight. I found myself scanning the tree line involuntarily every time I took the trash out or fetched something from the shed. The country air was crisp, and the nights seemed unnaturally silent. The moon approached fullness. That shouldn't have bothered me. Full moons are just a phase. But my grandmother's words echoed. The creature always came with the moon. My rational mind insisted it was coincidence or folklore. Yet I checked the windows twice each evening. At times I scoured the property for any unusual signs. The yard was mostly overgrown grass and weeds. The battered oak tree loomed out front. I found no footprints or claw marks, but near the back fence I noticed a few twisted branches, as if something heavy brushed past. Could be just animals. Rural areas have deer, coyotes, feral dogs. Still, I felt uneasy. During one search, I came upon an old cellar door at the side of the house. I'd never realized there was a cellar entrance from outside. It was padlocked, the metal rusted. Trying the small iron key from the cloth bundle, I discovered it fit perfectly. Inside, the cellar was musty, filled with cobwebs and rotting shelves. Nothing of note beyond dusty jars and old tools. Except, on the far wall, a set of deep scratches, parallel grooves etched into the stone. My heart pounded at the sight. They looked almost like claw marks, though faint. Was it from a raccoon? Something bigger? I retreated, chills skittering along my spine. That night I reread the final lines of the journal, imagining that tall silhouette tapping on the glass. My grandmother wrote of hearing soft knocks, almost polite. But when she peered out, she beheld something half lupine, half human, baring its teeth in a hideous parody of a smile. The notion made my stomach twist. A week passed in relative calm, but each day the moon grew larger. I told myself it was all in my head, that the old story was mere paranoia. But as the night of the full moon neared, I found myself anxious, double-checking doors and windows, leaving lights on in multiple rooms. Thunderstorms rolled in too, adding to the foreboding atmosphere with rumbling skies and flickers of lightning. The evening of the full moon arrived, the sky clearing enough to let silver light wash across the fields. I sat in the living room after dinner, curtains drawn, occasionally glancing at the clock. 10 p.m. rolled by. 11. My nerves were on edge. The house felt too quiet, the old floor planks seeming to creak on their own. If I listened hard enough, I thought I heard the wind moaning across the eaves, almost like an animal's cry. Midnight came. I realized I was essentially standing guard, expecting a monstrous visitor from decades ago. The rational part of me was annoyed at my own jumpiness. It's ridiculous, I thought. You're letting an old journal spook you. Still, I couldn't go to bed. I turned on more lights, brewed tea, paced. Then, around 12:30 a.m., I heard it faint scratching at the back of the house. My heart seized. I froze, straining my ears. The sound came again, a quiet scrape, as though claws tested the siding. My mouth went dry. Could it be a raccoon? Possibly, but my gut told me otherwise. Slowly, I tiptoed to the kitchen window and peered out. Nothing but darkness, shapes of bushes shifting in the moonlight. Another scrape sounded closer to the corner of the house, then silence. My pulse roared in my ears. I thought I saw a shadow shift among the trees, too large to be a raccoon. I retreated to the living room, feeling foolishly unarmed. Did we even have anything for defense? I had a tire iron in the trunk of my car, hardly comforting. My grandmother's journal mentioned that she and my grandfather tried everything, leaving lights on, even placing silver crosses at the windows, though that might have been more symbolic than functional. She said nothing about an effective weapon. At length, the scratching stopped. Hours trickled by. Eventually, exhaustion forced me to bed. No further disturbance, but as I drifted off, I kept picturing that tall figure, pressing its muzzle to the window, teeth bared in a lupine grin. I woke late the next morning, a sense of dread lingering. The moment I stepped outside to fetch the mail, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Claw marks on the windowsill of the living room. 4 long gouges fresh in the old paint. My grandmother's final diary entry flashed in my mind. Tonight it knocked on the window, and it smiled. My stomach twisted. The marks were real, tangible proof something had been there. My heart pounded as I traced them with a trembling hand. They matched the size and spacing you'd expect from a large paw or set of claws. I recalled the faint scraping sounds I heard in the night. So it wasn't imagination, nor was it a small animal. Something with formidable claws had tested that window. I felt exposed, as if the entire property was compromised. The morning sun did little to soothe my nerves. Could a normal wolf do that? Possibly a black bear. Yet in this region sightings are rare, and a bear wouldn't so precisely scratch a sill. A large dog? Maybe. But the height of the sill was unusual. My mind replayed the possibility of a wolf-man creature. Uncertain what else to do, I took pictures of the marks with my phone. I considered calling the local authorities. But what would I say? A monster from an old journal is prowling my yard. They'd dismiss me as hysterical. Maybe an animal control officer would investigate, see no conclusive evidence, and leave. Meanwhile, the phenomenon might persist. I spent the day in a haze of anxiety. The house, once a project of restoration, now felt like a besieged fortress. My grandmother's journal called it the wolf, or the moonlight visitor. She believed it was neither fully human nor fully beast. On impulse, I rummaged through the old trunk in the attic, seeking any religious artifacts or possible warding items. I found a tarnished crucifix, but that was it. The mirror from under the floorboards remained on my nightstand. Why had she hidden it? Maybe to catch a glimpse of the creature behind her, as she once wrote. That afternoon, clouds gathered again, threatening storms. I steeled myself for another night, suspecting the pattern might continue. The moon was still bright, even if partially shrouded. A second confrontation felt inevitable. Sure enough, Around 11 p.m., I heard movement outside, soft footfalls heavier than a cat's or dog's. The porch creaked. I froze in the living room, lights off except for a small lamp. My phone lay on the coffee table, but calling the police seemed pointless. By the time they arrived, it had vanished. The footsteps circled to the side window, the same place I'd found the claw marks. The hush was deafening. Then came a gentle tap on the glass. My blood ran cold. Knocking, exactly as grandmother described. Fear pounded in my chest. Slowly, I turned off the lamp, sank to my knees behind the couch, and peered around its edge. In the faint moonlight filtering through the window, I saw a silhouette. Tall, hunched, with pointed ears, a muzzle pressed close to the glass. My breath caught in my throat. Even from across the room, I sensed intelligence in that shape, a predator's cunning. A second tap, a bit firmer. I stifled a whimper. The figure shifted, and I glimpsed the barest suggestion of a grin, lips pulling back from teeth in a chilling approximation of a smile. My stomach churned. For a split second, I locked eyes with it. A cold dread sank to my core. The creature exuded a menacing awareness, as if to say, I see you, and you know I can reach you whenever I wish. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the yard. In that strobe, I saw the creature in sharper detail. Thick fur, elongated limbs, clawed hands. The face was wolf-like, yet the eyes glowed with an otherworldly glint. My grandmother's words repeated. It smiled. She hadn't been imagining things. The moment broke when thunder rumbled. The beast stepped back from the window, turned and loped off into the darkness. I collapsed against the couch, heart in my throat. It had come, knocked, revealed itself, and departed. Why not attack? Was it toying with me, as it had with my grandmother? My mind reeled with questions. Shaken, I flipped through the journal again, searching for any hint of a solution my grandmother might have uncovered. She wrote about prayers, about placing protective symbols on the doors. Nothing worked. She mentioned an old rumor that a silver mirror could repel certain evil creatures. The small silver mirror in the cloth bundle, did it matter? She also wrote, I read an old tale that the wolf abhors its own reflection. Perhaps that's why I keep the mirror near. It might be a feeble barrier, but it's something. Could that be why she hid the mirror? Did she use it to ward off the creature? The idea sounded far-fetched, but I was desperate. That next day, I polished the silver mirror as best I could, though it remained somewhat tarnished. I placed it on a windowsill at dusk, half hoping it might repel the beast if it returned. I also locked every door, hammered nails into some loose planks, even considered blocking windows with furniture. But I had no illusions. If the creature truly wanted to break in, these measures might be nothing. Night fell once more. Storm clouds moved away, revealing a blazing full moon. I clutched the diary for comfort, as though it might anchor me to reality. Outside, the wind rustled leaves. Midnight arrived, each minute an agonizing wait. 12:30, Unmad. I dozed intermittently, mind swirling with dread. Then at nearly 2 a.m., a sudden crash startled me awake. Something had toppled near the back porch. My heart jolted. I grabbed a flashlight and the silver mirror, mustering a shred of courage. Slowly, I crept to the back door, flicking on the outdoor light. Through the window, I saw my old metal trash bin knocked over. Spilled contents littered the ground. No sign of the intruder. The yard was eerily still, shadows cast by the moonlight. I inhaled, unlocked the door, and stepped onto the porch. My hand shook around the mirror handle. The night air chilled me to the bone. I scanned the corners, the beam of my flashlight revealing only scattered trash. Perhaps the creature rummaged around, then fled. My pulse thundered, every sense on high alert. Lightning bugs flickered in the distance, accentuating how alone I was. Then behind me came the faintest scrape a claw on wood. A surge of terror shot through me. I spun, mirror in one hand, flashlight in the other. The creature loomed at the edge of the porch, half in shadow, half in moonlight. Its tall frame blocked my path back inside. My breath caught. It was so close enough to see its chest rise and fall, close enough to smell a rank odor of damp fur and decay. Lightning illuminated the yard for an instant, revealing gleaming fangs in a twisted grin. My grandmother's final words repeated in my head, and it smiled. A whimper escaped my lips. Its eyes locked on me. Then, as if testing me, it took one step forward, claws scraping the porch. In a wild impulse, I raised the mirror, angling it so the moonlight bounced across its surface, shining faintly in the beast's direction. The creature froze, ears flattening. Its expression flickered from predatory amusement to something like startled disgust. Another step forward. I thrust the mirror more boldly, the reflection catching its eyes. A snarl tore from the creature's throat. It recoiled a half step as though the reflection burned. My heart leapt with hope. The mirror had an effect, maybe not a permanent solution, but it unsettled it. I seized the moment, lunging for the door. The beast swiped, claws raking through the air just behind me. I stumbled inside, slamming the door. The bolt clicked. My entire body trembled. From the other side, a guttural roar reverberated. Something heavy struck the door, rattling it in its frame. The mirror trick wouldn't hold it off forever. In desperation, I shouted, "Go away!" Another crash, then the sound of nails on the wood scraping furiously. I braced for the door to splinter, but after a tense minute, the pounding stopped. Through the window, I caught a glimpse of the beast storming back into the yard, tail lashing in frustration. It vanished among the trees. I sunk to the floor, shaking uncontrollably, tears stinging my eyes. The mirror lay on the kitchen counter, now my only defense. My grandmother's words rang in my head. Silver mirror, reflection, abhors its own visage. She had known. She had tried to keep the creature at bay with that mirror, but in the end, it still came tapping on her window. For the next few days, I lived in a constant state of heightened fear. The creature was out there, prowling, returning each night. The claw marks multiplied. I found fresh scratches on the porch railing, the back door, even scuffs on the corners of the house's siding. My mind whirled with the question, what does it want? My grandmother never fully explained. She only documented its presence. She wrote about the sense that it was claiming the land as its territory, or testing her strength. I considered fleeing, simply abandoning the house. Yet something in me refused to run. My grandmother had endured this, living here for years. Perhaps she never had the funds or the will to leave. Maybe she believed she could outlast it. But her diaries ended abruptly, leaving no mention of how or if it finally left her alone. She did pass away in the house from natural causes, so the official story went. Could the creature have had a hand in it? There was no sign of foul play, but I wasn't sure. One evening, as the next full moon approached, I resolved to end this torment. I rummaged the entire house for a weapon. Only an old shotgun, rusted and probably useless, sat in the closet. The shells were decades old. Still, I cleaned it, prayed it might fire. I also polished the silver mirror again, determined not to face that beast empty-handed. Then, on the night of the next full moon, I prepared. I placed the mirror by the front windowsill, the shotgun within reach, and turned off all lights. My plan? Lure the creature close, confront it with the mirror, and if it attacked, try to shoot. A half-baked idea, but better than cowering every night. Midnight came. The moon shone bright over the yard. I waited in near darkness, breath shallow. The hours ticked. My nerves frayed. Then around 1:30 a.m., a familiar shuffling noise on the porch. My heart hammered. The doorknob twisted. A low growl rumbled through the wood. It was here. I switched on a single lamp, flooding the living room with dim light. Through the frosted window glass, a tall outline stood. My mouth went dry. I braced the mirror against my chest with one arm, grabbed the shotgun with the other. This was it. A slow, deliberate knock sounded, 3 gentle taps. My pulse thundered in my ears. I positioned myself near the window, took a shaky breath, and flung it open. The creature stood on the porch, muzzle inches from the glass. We locked eyes. Its lips curled in that horrifying grin, revealing fangs. Without hesitation, I thrust the silver mirror through the open window space, angled to reflect the beast's face. A snarl erupted. The creature recoiled, arms raising to shield its visage. I pulled the shotgun up, aimed at the chest, and fired. The blast shook the house. Smoke filled my vision. I staggered back from the recoil, nearly dropping the mirror. My ears rang. Did I hit it? Coughing, I peered through the settling smoke. The porch was empty. A dark shape fled into the yard, dragging a hind leg. A savage growl echoed. then the shape melted into the tree line. I collapsed against the wall, relief and terror mingling. The shot, old as it was, must have wounded it, or at least spooked it. But did I kill it? Likely not. Dawn revealed scattered blood droplets on the porch, black and viscous. My shaky relief turned to alarm. Wounded or not, the beast still lived. Yet for several nights after, it didn't return. The yard remained quiet, the windows free of new claw marks. As if it was nursing its injuries or waiting for a better chance, time wore on. I finished partial renovations, but a sense of finality never came. My grandmother's presence felt close, as if urging me to remain vigilant. She had believed the wolf was unstoppable, only deterred by silver reflections. Perhaps that mirror was enough to keep it at bay for a while. Now, months later, I sleep with the silver mirror beside my bed. I keep the house locked, the shotgun loaded with fresh shells if I can find them. Neighbors remain scarce in this rural area, so no one notices my anxious watch. I think about leaving, selling the property, yet I can't bring myself to do it. Some part of me feels bound by my grandmother's memory to watch over this place, to keep the wolf from claiming it fully. Sometimes I hear faint howling across the fields on bright moonlit nights. My heart flutters with dread. But each time the howling remains distant. The wolf doesn't approach the house. Not yet. But if it ever does, I'll be here, mirror in hand, refusing to yield. Because even though it once smiled at me through the window, I will not let that grin be the last thing I see. And so the old house stands, silent by day, haunted by possibility at night. My grandmother's final journal entry remains seared into my mind. Tonight it knocked on the window, and it smiled. She faced it. Now I do too. The moonlight visitor lingers at the edges of the forest, waiting. Perhaps it always will, a reminder that some secrets dwell in the quiet countryside, pacing in the shadows beneath the full moon, ever watchful, ever hungry.